Hello, I'm LegoMan71 and welcome to the 4th episode of Modeling Mocs. Today I'm doing my first ever part 2 video. The subject of today's video is a continuation of the last episode, taking dinosaurs and turning them into Bionicles. These creatures live in what I like to call a splinter universe from the original Bionicle storyline. In this universe, when the war-ravaged world of Magna was being restored to its former glory, its two moons, instead of being combined again with the planet, the moons remained in their separate orbits. I'm currently unsure if this is how it actually went in the original storyline, because due to my research, I have not been able to find anything that suggests otherwise. Hence the quote-unquote creation of this splinter universe. Without further ado, let's get on to the video. In my last entry about the Pyronic Raptoid, I mentioned a new species of hadrosauric dinosaurs. This creature that I later named the Miasauradon was a combination of dark and sand blue colors. Its head was similar to that of a creature from the Matoran universe. I believe the archives called it a Rakshi, the Sons of Makuta. Of course, the fabled battle that ensued before the restoration of our world was decades before my time, but my Matoran friends assured me of what it resembled. The Miasauradons traveled in herds of nearly a dozen individuals. They seemed to be incredible parents, often keeping their juveniles within the protection of the herd. These creatures fed on vegetation close to the ground, thus always being on all fours for most of the time. Unless, of course, there was imminent danger, to which they will run on their hind legs at incredible speeds. I wonder how it was that juvenile was separated from its herd for the Pyronic Raptoid to hunt and kill it. The answer to my question would eventually find us. Due to the fact I was pressed for time on the last video, I didn't get to include notes, so I'm going to try and make up for it for this episode. Now, I did want to create a hadrosaur dinosaur, although I was having a hard time trying to figure out which one I wanted to do. I had narrowed down to an iguanodon, which Emperor of Toons Beast suggested in the comments of the last video, a Miasauros, which is what I decided on, and a Parasaurolophus. Earlier this month I had purchased myself a copy of Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is where I do my research for the design of these creatures. And the color scheme of this particular creature is based directly off of the video game. Now for the body, I tried to use a lot more older parts and try to come up with a little bit more of a complex building technique, mainly because I just want to try out how other people in the mock making community might recreate this thing as a Bionicle. I'm trying to expand my capacity for building mocks like this, just trying to break out of that singular Hero Factory CCBS parts and go into more complex forms of construction building. In the future, I'll try to be a little bit more creative with a body for hadrosaurs, but I have a strange feeling that, well, most hadrosaurs do have the same sort of build structures, so I may just reuse this body technique every once in a while when I do hadrosaurs. All in all, I think it's a fairly decent model. It's not one of my favorites I've ever made, but it's still pretty decent for the time I spent on it. After several long weeks of traveling, we finally came to what appeared as the dinosaur's final destination. We stopped at a large set of hot springs. Frozen ground turned to lush fields of grass. The temperature was that of a muggy swamp. This was the reason why the dinosaurs migrate north during the dry season. There were countless herds of herbivorous dinosaurs. But where there's prey, predators are often not far behind. In the distance I saw the figure of an 8-foot-tall beast, one that I had seen briefly in the frozen snowstorms throughout this northern expedition, though I dismissed it as my eyes playing tricks on me. The creature stood on its two hind legs and seemed to have much smaller forearms. On its head was a single gallant bright green crest. It stood tall over the frozen valley. With no larger predators around, this Cryolopha-Magnas reigned dominion over this region. It chased the herds of Miasauradons with a great speed and agility, and eventually captured itself a well-fought meal. This was actually the last mock that I made, and it took surprisingly under an hour from start to finish. The base model I used for the head was the Ash Bear head designed by Galva on Thingiverse, which I also used for the Dilophosaurus. Speaking of which, compared to the Dilophosaurus, the physical mock is a little over half the size of the Dilophosaurus, which is actually a funny thing. In the fossil records, the Cryolophosaurus is measured at 2 meters or 8.2 feet, and the Dilophosaurus is actually 10 feet tall. So it's kind of a crazy coincidence on how that works. This dinosaur was suggested to me by Emperor of Toons Beast, who I mentioned earlier in this video, and when I saw his comment on this, I really liked that idea. Of course, I had to do a whole lot more research on this dinosaur, seeing how the last time I thought about it was when I saw it on a kids show in the early 2000s about dinosaurs.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
If I remember correctly, I think it was that show called Dinosaur Train on PBS Kids. Oh god, did I just age myself? After spending several days collecting data in the migration hot springs, we began our journey back to base camp. While exploring a temperate taiga biome, my associates and I came across a new species of mecha dinosaur. This was a bipedal theropod with a long neck and very long serrated claws. Although it has been observed to be an herbivore eating berries and ground leaves, it is incredibly territorial. I saw it approach an adult vibro elk. The beast towered over the 8-foot tall elk, and then, as our Lematoran compatriot phrased it, that thing yeeted it halfway across the forest. I later brought up his comment with the others, and just like me, they had no idea what he was saying. The one specimen that we encountered seemed to have very poor eyesight. At first I assumed that this was a simple trait throughout the species, but then I noticed its wounds that seemed to have been caused in a fight with the Dilophosaurus. It's now suspected that the blindness being a long-term effect of the Dilo's venom. Due to its large scythe-like claws, I will refer to this genus as the Thero-Xeno-Morphus. Now, we end this video today with the first mock that I created. I had a very hard time trying to figure out the color scheme of this, so eventually I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna pick a couple random colors and just put it in there. For the head, I used I think it's the Toa-Vakama Hordiga head from 2005, the Web of Shadows line. I just thought that would be a very close enough head when you compare it to the very bird-like head of the Thero-Xeno-Morphus. Another thing that I had a hard time trying to figure out was the hands and the claws to go on there. I really wanted some more longer, skinnier, blade-like, katana-like claws, but I couldn't find any that were either long enough or small enough, so I eventually just, like I did with the color scheme, just picked a sharp piece and stuck with it. And the last thing that I found difficult about this mock was taking the name of the Thero-Xeno-Morphus and trying making it sound like a Bionicle, like Rahi. Creating names has always been a little hard for me because I'm not always that creative. So I was thinking, okay, I want to keep the beginning part of the name, so what's something that I can make it sound not like a direct ripoff of the actual name? So there's Xenosaurus, Xenomorph, like an alien Xenomorphus. So that's basically how I came up with the name of this dinosaur. Well, that just about covers it. I think I enjoyed making some of these dinosaurs more than I did the last batch, especially the Cryolopha-Magnas. I'm really proud of how that one turned out. But I think I may take a little break on turning dinosaurs into Bionicles, just for a little while, not forever. Probably just a month or two. Maybe try my hand at a couple other things. My favorite thing about the Construction and CCVS pieces is that you can take anything and make what you want from it. I know that's to be said about a lot of LEGO stuff, but this one I really like because I am a huge fan of sci-fi and robots and mechanical things, which is why I always loved Bionicle, Hero Factory, and my all-time favorite, Transformers. In an earlier episode of this series, I created a TOA based on the Netflix's Daredevil and hinted at a team of other TOA. Eventually I had planned to do the rest of Marvel's Defenders, and I may do any of the other Netflix/Disney Plus Marvel heroes like Moon Knight, Punisher, and characters from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think my favorite character from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was in Season 4 with Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider. From the Flaming Hellcharger to his metallic gray skull head. I've tried several times in studio to recreate a Bionicle version of that particular Ghost Rider, but I could never figure out how to get the flames right. Maybe one day I'll figure it out. And that's about it. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Emperor of Toons Beast for giving me all the suggestions for the dinosaurs, which I could do in this episode and possibly even further episodes. And I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to, consider subscribing. And if you made it this far, comment down below what dinosaurs or any other thing you'd like me to turn into LEGO Mocs. And with that, I end the transmission now.
Game over.